the action recap is approved. All right, then we will move on to the director's report.
All right. What did I do with it? Here it is. Let me first tell you what the City Council has done since your last meeting. Your last meeting, of course, was on December 11th. They have met twice since then, on December 16th and January 20th. On December 16th, the Council held a study session on the draft economic development strategy and work plan for the next 2 fiscal years and provided staff direction on that. They also approved a request for proposals for a public art master plan, which will include provisions for district banners as well as city gateways. The council heard an informational report on unreinforced masonry and soft story buildings and requested staff to pursue an investigation of soft story buildings. That's more of a building division item. They approved the plans and specifications for the Bay Trail, bicycle and pedestrian improvements on Christie Avenue between Shell Mound and Powell Streets and authorized the city engineer to advertise for bids. And finally, they heard an update from the owner's representative on the status of construction of the Emeryville Center of Community Life project. On January 20th, this past Tuesday, the council held a study session on the Sherwin-Williams project, which was very well attended. There were a number of speakers, mostly from 1500 Park Avenue and the Artists Co-op. The major concerns included, that were expressed by the speakers and by the council, included traffic, shadows, building massing, family-friendly housing, ownership housing, and density. The council also unanimously approved the Emeryville, Oakland, Berkeley transit study, finally, so kudos to Diana. That is now a done deal and all approved. The council unanimously approved a conditional use permit, major design review and setback variance application to demolish 2 existing residential units and replace them with 2 new units at 5532 Doyle Street. As you may recall, this project was approved by the commission at your last meeting on December 11th. And finally, this is not really related to the commission, but I thought you'd be interested to know that the council heard a report on minimum wage and directed staff to prepare an ordinance for a minimum wage tied to our living wage, which is a little over $14 an hour. This would be higher than the minimum wages in Berkeley, Oakland, and San Francisco, and it's to take effect by July 1st. So we have our marching orders to put that together. And finally, in other news, I just want to remind you all that the scoping meeting for the Sherwin-Williams Environmental Impact Report is next Tuesday, 5 days from today, next Tuesday evening, January 27th, here in the council chambers at 6:30 p.m. And again, this scoping session is about the EIR and what topics are to be covered by the EIR and what alternatives to the project are to be looked at in the EIR. It's not about the merits of the project itself. It's about the EIR. And while it is a public meeting and everyone is invited to attend, and it will be broadcast on ETV live and videotaped, it is not a planning commission meeting nor a city council meeting. The meeting will be facilitated by our EIR consultant. So that concludes my report, and I'd be happy to respond to any questions you may have.
I have one question about the council's direction on the minimum wage ordinance. Was their direction that the full living wage would be effective in July, or that it would be phased in any way?
You mean the full minimum wage?
Yeah.
I believe the direction was to have it take effect on July 1st without any phase-in period, right? I mean, we're still sort of fleshing out exactly what the direction was, but it was pretty clear that they want a minimum wage in place tied to our living wage by July 1st. So we have a lot of work to do between now and then. That means effective July 1st. Yeah. And that means it takes 2 readings of an ordinance, which doesn't take effect for 30 days. So basically that means the first reading of the ordinance has to be in April. So we're working on it.
Question for you. Do we have any update information on the pedestrian bridge, the Bay Center over at Bay Street and Horton?
Do you want to answer that, Michael?
Sure. Yeah, so briefly, the monies that the redevelopment agency had pledged for the South Bayfront Bridge had been tied up in litigation against the Department of State. The State Department of Finance. And if you recall, we had, the city's position was that the agreements between the city and the successor agency, which allowed for the transfer of those funds, were proper transfers. The State Department of Finance had taken the position that those agreements were invalidated by the dissolution law. We litigated that issue, and the trial court agreed with us. The state then appealed that decision, and we received a decision last week. And the appellate court affirmed the trial court decisions found for the city, and agreed with the city's position that those agreements were valid and therefore the funds were properly transferred. However, that being said, the state still has the option of requesting further review before the state Supreme Court. I think that time for requesting a review is about 30 days or so. We do not know if they will or will not request further appellate review, and certainly the state Supreme Court has no obligation to take the application for further review. So stay tuned.
As a taxpayer to the state, I'd like to ask them to not waste our money and fight this any further.
We should know by your next meeting whether or not they have appealed it to or petitioned the Supreme Court.
Right, and the other thing I'll add too is that if the Supreme Court accepts the petition, there's a whole other briefing schedule that will take place, and it'll be at least a year or so before that review process has run its course.
Thank you.
Any other questions of staff?